Tess, a girl born into poverty, possesses a breathtaking and unparalleled beauty, yet in the prime of her youth, she is burdened with many younger siblings, forcing her to toil every day just to keep the family alive. Meanwhile, her alcoholic father idles away his days, constantly fantasizing about one day climbing into high society and striking it rich overnight. At a time when the family can barely secure even basic food and clothing, her father learns of a noble relative. Her mother clings to this news like a lifeline, desperately urging Tess to go and claim kinship. Unable to defy her parents, Tess carefully dresses herself and sets out on the journey to find this distant family. The moment she steps into the grand estate of the Deerville family, a deep sense of inferiority rises within her. Before even entering the house, she begins to lose her nerve and prepares to turn back. Just then, a young man happens to walk over from the garden. After Tess explains her purpose, the man introduces himself as her cousin. The cousin warmly invites Tess to tour their garden, but the way he looks at her carries a hint of ill intent. He continuously praises Tess's beauty, while playfully and suggestively feeding her strawberries. However, instead of bringing Tess into the manor to meet his mother, the cousin entertains her lavishly inside a tent in the garden. As he gazes at the pure and youthful Tess, the cousin makes a decision. Only 3 days after returning home, Tess receives a letter from the Deerville family. In the letter, Mrs. Deerville expresses her wish for Tess to work at their farm managing the poultry house, promising generous monthly pay. The next day, Tess bids farewell to her family, but her father shows no sign of reluctance to part with his daughter, offering only a casual remark.
Goodbye, girl. Oh, you're a comely sight.
He then repeatedly reminds Tess that her cousin has reached marriageable age, and if she can win his heart, their family will never have to worry about food or clothing again. Under her father's cold gaze, Tess leaves home. Her cousin even travels 200 miles from the estate to personally greet her. Only her young siblings truly feel reluctant to see her go. However, once the carriage leaves the village, the cousin deliberately drives it erratically, forcing Tess to lean toward him to keep her balance. He then makes an unreasonable demand.
One little kiss on those ruby lips, or even on that satin cheek, and I'd drive at a snail's pace.
After Tess refuses, he suddenly urges the horse forward, and taking advantage of her distraction, he leans in and kisses her. Tess is furious, and she deliberately knocks off her hat, using the excuse of retrieving it to make him stop the carriage. From that moment on, Tess would rather walk 100 miles than ride in his carriage again. Upon arriving at the Deerville estate, Tess learns from a co-worker that the cousin's family does not actually bear the name Deerville. After coming into a sudden fortune, they purchase the prestigious surname to elevate their social status. At that moment, Mrs. Deerville's maid arrives to inform them to deliver the day's fresh eggs to the manor, but when they stand before Mrs. Deerville, Tess discovers that she has been blind for many years. In an instant, Tess realizes that the person who wrote the invitation letter to her parents was not Mrs. Deerville, but the deceitful and flirtatious cousin. Yet for the sake of the generous pay, Tess chooses to stay. In the days that follow, the cousin frequently seeks Tess out, expressing his affection both openly and subtly. One day after work, the laborers walk back toward their dormitories. An older woman mocks a plump maid, and while everyone bursts into laughter, the maid directs all her anger toward Tess alone. Not only that, she even pushes Tess aggressively. At that very moment, the cousin rides over on horseback. After scolding the servants, he gestures for Tess to climb onto his horse. Watching their figures disappear into the distance, the workers sigh, saying that another foolish girl has walked straight into danger. Meanwhile, instead of taking Tess back to her lodging, the cousin heads deeper into the forest. He tells her that just last week he delivered a horse and 50 pounds for living expenses to her parents. Naive and grateful, Tess thanks him for his kindness, while he seizes the moment to confess the torment of longing he feels for her. He asks Tess to agree to become his lover. Tess is thrown into panic, and as she resists his attempt to kiss her, she accidentally pushes too hard and knocks him off the horse. Seeing his head strike heavily against a tree stump, Tess is filled with guilt and rushes forward to check on him, but unexpectedly, he suddenly grabbed her and pinned her to the ground. Tess struggles desperately against him, but powerless against the difference in strength. This radiant 18-year-old flower begins to wither in that very moment. Having gotten what he wanted, the cousin tries desperately to please Tess with material gifts. Yet when faced with the elegant dresses and hats, Tess feels no joy, and her smile completely disappears. Whenever night falls, the drunken cousin repeatedly pounds on her door, and the sound fills Tess with even greater fear. Before long, Tess can no longer endure such a life. and she decides to leave him and return to her hometown. On the day she leaves, the cousin rushes to persuade her, but his words trample the last shred of Tess's dignity.
If you're wise, you'll let the world get a clearer sight of that beauty before it fades. Why not make the most of life? We didn't fare so badly together, did we?
Without hesitation, Tess steps off the carriage, unwilling to remain by his side for even a moment longer. Back in her hometown, Tess returns to her life of hardship, but now she carries a new identity as a single mother. It turns out that 5 months earlier, she gave birth to the cousin's child, but on a stormy night filled with thunder and rain, the child falls into a coma due to a relentless high fever. Her father refuses to let the village doctor enter the house, because he feels ashamed before the neighbors over his daughter's unmarried pregnancy. Helpless, Tess kneels on the ground all night, praying to God and hoping her child will survive this ordeal. But tragically, this fragile life that had just come into the world still comes to an end. Tess buries the child alone. Faced with such a cold-hearted father, Tess gathers herself and resolutely chooses to leave home. She finds work at a nearby farm milking cows. Here, no one pries into each other's past. Everyone stays busy with their work all day, and Tess finally feels at ease. The farm owner is also kind and eats with the workers every day. At the table, people joke roughly with one another, and there is no sense of hierarchy. Yet every time Tess speaks, her words stand out, catching the attention of a young man reading nearby. The young man's name is Angel, and he comes from a distinguished family. However, he longs deeply for rural life, so he has come to the farm specifically to learn agricultural skills. Gentle and refined, Angel is the dream of many of the female workers, and every move he makes stirs their hearts. On the day of the regular church prayer, the girls, dressed in their finest clothes, are blocked by a stretch of standing water. To avoid dirtying their only beautiful dresses, they struggle to walk along the edge of the road. Just then, Angel approaches from a distance, notices their concern, and gallantly lifts each girl in turn, carrying them across the ankle-deep water. When it is Tess's turn, she refuses his help. But one sentence from Angel fills her with warmth. He says that helping the others was only a way to get closer to her. This is their first true moment of closeness, as sunlight filters through the branches and falls across their faces, binding their young hearts tightly together. From that day on, Angel can no longer take his eyes off Tess. One day, unable to suppress his feelings any longer, he confesses his love to the one he cherishes. The very next day, Angel rushes home without delay. At the doorstep, he runs into his childhood friend Mercy. After returning home, Angel eagerly tells his parents that he wants to get married, but when his parents learn that Tess is merely a milkmaid, they firmly oppose the relationship. In their eyes, Mercy, who is well educated and comes from a family of equal status, is the ideal choice for their daughter-in-law. However, Angel insists that love is greater than all worldly concerns. Ignoring his parents' opposition, he decides to give up everything. He returns to the farm and formally proposes to Tess. Overwhelmed by this sudden happiness, Tess feels that this is the love she has always dreamed of. Angel embodies every ideal she has ever imagined about love. Yet when she thinks of her painful past, Tess once again falls into endless anxiety. But she does not want to deceive the man she loves, so she decides to write a letter confessing everything to Angel. If Angel learns of her past and still chooses to stay with her, she will accept his love without any burden. Tess secretly slips the letter under Angel's door, and then she waits anxiously outside his room for the entire night. Before dawn the next day, Angel comes downstairs, sees Tess before him, and cannot help but embrace her. Tess mistakenly believes that Angel has already read her letter, and for the entire morning, her heart feels as if it is blooming with joy. But at noon, when Tess brings the flowers she has picked to Angel's room and carefully arranges them, she discovers as she leaves that the confession letter is still tucked beneath the carpet, and Angel has not seen it at all. Yet Angel cannot wait to marry Tess. With the blessings of their co-workers, they hold a solemn wedding. Up until this very moment, Tess feels as though she is living in a dream. She does not want to lose the man beside her, yet an ominous sense of unease keeps creeping over her. On their wedding night, Angel is extraordinarily gentle. In order to be with Tess, he even breaks ties with his parents and rents a small house as their marital home. Not only that, Claire also used most of his savings to gift Tess an extremely valuable set of jewelry, with the brilliance of the jewelry enhancing her. Tess appeared radiant and captivating, a beauty far removed from anything gaudy. Angel embraced Tess as if he had found a priceless treasure. At this moment, Angel confessed to Tess that he had been involved with a woman during his time studying abroad. After hearing this, Tess showed not the slightest concern, and instead felt guilty for Angel's honesty, so she decided to confess that she had once been violated by her cousin and had given birth to a child. Unexpectedly, after Tess finished speaking, Angel suddenly fell into silence. In that instant, he felt deceived by Tess's appearance. Without saying a word, he walked out of the bridal chamber in a daze. Tess chased after him, hoping to gain Angel's forgiveness, but Angel said, "I loved who you were before. The person you are now has become a stranger to me." On their wedding night, an icy distance suddenly grew between them. The next day, Angel told Tess that he needed some time to reconsider their relationship. Tess believed that time would eventually help Angel accept her again. She said goodbye to Angel and asked him to write to her once he had made up his mind, promising that she would wait for him all along. After leaving Angel, Tess has nowhere to go. She walks alone along the country road, and when night falls, she spreads her clothes on the ground in the forest and sleeps under the open sky. In order to survive, she decides to search for work as she travels. Unexpectedly, on the road, she encounters Felix, who once worked as a steward in her cousin's household. Felix recognizes Tess at a glance, and seeing her in such a desolate state, he continuously insults and humiliates the poor girl with his words. Tess has no choice but to pretend to turn into a side path to deliberately avoid him. Not until nightfall does Tess arrive at the home of a childhood friend. Although her friend appears to be struggling, she warmly welcomes Tess and agrees to take her in. The next day, the two women, bound by similar fates, go to work picking potatoes for a household, but to their dismay, the overseer there turns out to be the harsh Felix. Felix constantly finds fault with Tess. He criticizes her for working too slowly and even threatens to report her troubled past to the employer. In order to prevent her friend from losing her job and being dragged into trouble, Tess decisively packs her belongings that very night while her friend is asleep and quietly leaves. The world is vast, yet Tess has no place to belong. She wanders from one village to another. 2 years later, the cousin appears at a farm. It turns out that a friend of his has spotted Tess there, doing heavy labor usually reserved for men. After learning that Tess once gave birth to his child, he feels a trace of guilt, so he deliberately comes to persuade Tess to accept his help. But when Tess thinks of his disgraceful actions, she still feels nothing but disgust toward him. Even when he waits for her until late at night after being rejected, Tess refuses to acknowledge him. The cousin cannot understand why Tess rejects him so strongly when he can offer her a life of wealth and comfort. But by now, Tess is no longer the naive girl she once was. She continues to write letters to Angel every day, even though he has not replied to a single one. A month later, Tess receives news of her father's death. She returns to her hometown to arrange his funeral. Driven by an obsessive desire to possess her, the cousin becomes increasingly relentless in pursuing Tess. He tells Tess that no woman has ever dared to treat him with such contempt. If Tess continues to resist, he will make her pay a painful price. Sure enough, when Tess returns home with her family, they are told that their house has been sold to repay her father's gambling debts. Tess understands that all of this is the cousin's doing behind the scenes. With nowhere else to go, the family is forced to move their few remaining belongings into an abandoned church to shelter from the cold. Looking at her mother and her innocent younger siblings, Tess cannot help but sigh, wondering why her fate is so cruel. 2 years later, one day, a familiar figure appears in front of Tess's home. Angel hurries toward the house, but the new owner tells him that Tess and her family have long since moved away. A kind priest brings Angel to Tess's father's grave and tells him the new address of Tess's mother. When Angel knocks on the door of Tess's mother's house, her younger sister opens it, followed by her mother. After learning who Angel is, Tess's mother advises him not to disturb Tess's life again, as she knows how difficult these years have been for her daughter. But thinking that Angel is the only man Tess has ever loved, the mother changes her mind. In a picturesque seaside town, Angel finally finds Tess's home. The plump maid is puzzled, saying that her mistress never goes out and has no friends. As the maid goes upstairs to announce his arrival, Angel feels extremely anxious, as he has never been able to let go of Tess all these years. Soon, Tess slowly walks downstairs. There is no emotion in her eyes, and she appears calm yet empty. Tess says that he has come too late, that she has written to him again and again while he pretended not to see, and now everything is beyond repair. Before Angel can explain, Tess turns and walks back upstairs. After Angel leaves, the curious maid peeks through the door and sees Tess collapsed over the dining table, crying in sorrow. Soon after, the cousin emerges from his room, as if already accustomed to Tess's behavior. When Tess lifts her head, the sharp dining knife in the cousin's hand appears especially striking. Tess hesitates as she moves toward the door, then turns back, A few minutes later, Tess puts on her most beautiful dress and hurries downstairs. Watching her hurried figure, the maid suddenly feels an ominous sense of unease. She looks up and notices a drop of bright red liquid seeping down from upstairs. Standing on a stool, she touches it with her finger and instantly shows a look of shock. Meanwhile, at the very last moment before the train departs, Tess appears before Angel. They embrace tightly without a single word. Tess, exhausted, tells Angel that she understands him now. Only when Angel lowers his gaze and sees the bloodstains on the hem of Tess's dress does he believe what has happened. He tells Tess that no matter what she has faced, he will never abandon her. Angel takes Tess and they head north together. He says that in just 3 days, they will reach the border, and once they arrive in Switzerland, they will begin a new life. They travel along small paths, constantly avoiding those pursuing them. At night, they rest in the silent forest, just as Tess once did when she had no home. The next day, they pass by the house where they were married, but its doors and windows are tightly shut. Angel breaks the glass window and leads Tess inside. Inside the room, nothing has changed. In their bridal home, Angel gently removes Tess's shoes. On this night, in the same place 5 years later, their wedding night is finally fulfilled. But Tess has paid for it with her youth, and even her life. When the landlady comes to clean the room, she discovers Angel and Tess in the bedroom. Seeing the landlady hurry away, Angel knows they cannot stay here, but Tess is utterly exhausted and does not want to leave. Yet Angel hopes that Tess can live on, so they escape again under the cover of darkness. As dawn approaches, the exhausted Tess can no longer continue walking. She wants to stop and rest, and Angel does not stop her, holding her tightly in his arms. In the thin mist of the valley, Tess lies half asleep on the cold rocks. The desolation of this moment mirrors her entire past. Not far away, mounted officers slowly approach them. Angel asks them to let Tess sleep a little longer. Tess awakens during their conversation and says that they have come to take her away. Tess has done nothing wrong, yet the love of two men has led her step by step into the abyss.